Let's jump right into a really fascinating linguistic mystery today. This explainer unpacks a super compelling source that looks at how some of the most ancient picture writers in history might have actually recorded a story you're probably very familiar with. We're looking at an analysis called the fruit tragedy, which suggests that ancient Chinese logographs are essentially visual equations that map perfectly onto the Genesis account of the Garden of Eden. It's an absolutely brilliant look at how human beings encode history right into the very fabric of written language. Okay, let's dive into this with a question. Imagine you're watching a popular television quiz program, and the host asks the contestants, how can you portray the word temptation by using just 4 words? And to help them out, the host gives a little hint. The first word is garden. Immediately, a contestant fires back with the answer, garden, Eve, serpent, apple. And of course, they were totally correct. I mean, in Western culture, it's almost impossible not to equate the whole concept of temptation with that specific episode recorded in the book of Genesis. But this raises a much deeper question. How did the most ancient of all picture writers, the original inventors of Chinese characters, actually illustrate this concept? Are their written characters just random strokes, or do they tell a deliberate story?
Chapter 1. 2 Trees and a Woman.
So let's set the stage in that ancient garden. The Genesis narrative specifically points out that there were 2 incredibly important trees placed side by side right in the middle of the Garden of Eden, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And as the story goes, it was the woman Eve who first looked upon the forbidden tree. Well, this brilliantly illustrates our very first connection. If you want to write the ancient Chinese character for to covet or to desire, you actually construct it like a visual equation. You take the symbol representing 2 trees, and you place the symbol for woman right underneath it. The biblical record states that the woman saw the tree was to be desired. It wasn't the man who first coveted the fruit, it was the woman. So the character literally paints this exact historical picture.
Moving right along to Chapter 2, the Forbidden Command. Now, God placed humanity in this lush, luxuriant garden, but he established a divine rule regarding these specific trees, basically a test of loyalty. They were commanded to eat freely from the tree of life, but eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that was strictly restricted. Let's see how this builds visually. When you take the symbol for God, which, when a little hook is added to the middle stroke, becomes a verb meaning God commands or notifies, and you combine it with the symbol for 2 trees, you get the character for forbidden or to warn. It is incredibly meaningful that, to this very day, Chinese writers still write about these 2 trees when using the word forbidden. It pictographically records that original divine instruction.
Chapter 3, The Secret Garden Man.
Well, every tragedy needs an antagonist, right? A mighty fallen angel who sought to deceive humanity. Let's look at how the ancient writers built his identity, piece by piece, using individual character radicals. The crucial point here is how these distinct, separate symbols stack together to tell a narrative. Step 1 is the radical for motion or something that's alive. Step 2 brings in the radical for a garden. Step 3 is the radical for a man. And finally, step 4 is a primitive radical indicating acting privately or secretly. Think about the story for a second. The deceiver moved into the garden, speaking privately to Eve with the voice of a man. When you combine these 4 specific elements, motion, garden, man, and acting privately, you get the exact character for devil. It's like the ancient Chinese practically nicknamed the devil the secret garden man. It's an unbelievably precise representation of the seduction in the garden, just completely frozen in ancient calligraphy. Chapter 4, The Tempter in the Trees. So what happens when that devil actually makes his move? The devil, using the serpent as a medium, waited for the perfect opportunity when Eve was alone, resting in the branches of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Notice how the word devil is frequently qualified by another character, meaning tempter or demon. To write tempter, you take the devil character we just built and you add the symbol for 2 trees, along with a radical that represents a cover. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the physical evolution of the character itself. You can visually see the narrative progressing right in front of you. The tempter is literally the devil taking refuge under the cover of the trees in the middle of the Garden of Eden. The character design is literally camouflaged, exactly the same way the tempter was camouflaged in the Genesis account. It shows us not just who the entity is, but exactly where he was hiding when he initiated the temptation. And that brings us to Chapter 5. The Genesis of Sin. Lucifer planted questions and doubt in Eve's mind, telling her that she absolutely would not die, but rather her eyes would be opened. And this leads us to the tragic climax of the narrative, the actual physical act of disobedience. Notice these 3 chilling, solitary elements that really define this tragic moment. First, the woman, acting entirely by herself. Second, the concept of doing it secretly or alone. And third, the mouth, indicating the act of eating. When you assemble these three components together, a woman, secretly, and a mouth for eating, they construct the character for beginning. Specifically, this commemorates the sad historical event of the Genesis, or the beginning of sin itself. The entire monumental episode is compacted down into a single, elegant ideograph. To really drive this home, older, even more ancient renderings of this character were visually explicit. Some forms show the radical for secretly shaped almost exactly like a piece of fruit, literally disappearing into an open mouth. More modified ancient forms depict a hand actually feeding the mouth of the woman. I mean, it leaves virtually zero room for ambiguity regarding what specific action is being portrayed here. Now, what you really should take away from this is the broader historical context. The Hebrews and the ancient Chinese were people separated by massive, sweeping geographical distances, and yet, the source material points out that the Chinese characters containing this detailed record actually preceded the Hebrew writings of Genesis by many centuries. Which leaves us with a truly profound and provocative final thought today. If these peoples were so incredibly widely separated, how on earth did the inventors of ancient Chinese calligraphy capture this exact, highly specific story, down to the specific details of the two trees, the hidden deceiver, and the woman eating the fruit alone, centuries before the book of Genesis was ever even penned? It's a striking similarity, for sure, and one that forces us to look at the foundations of written language and ancient history itself in a completely new light. So keep exploring and keep questioning the history encoded right in front of our eyes.